amount of money laundered every year is estimated at 2 to 5% of global GDP. 2% of global GDP is roughly equal to the combined GDP of Turkey, the Philippines, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan. Over $500 billion flows out of developing countries each year. Much of this money flows into Western economies via complex offshore structures. In 1952, the future Kenyan President Jomo Kenyatta is imprisoned by the British colonial authorities. He becomes a symbol of Kenya's struggle for independence.
Jomo Kenyatta is viewed as Kenya's father of independence, so to speak. He used to go by the name Johnston Kamau. He used to be a water meter reader in the colonial government's municipal council. He was also fairly well spoken. I believe that's part of the reason why he was selected from amongst the political intelligentsia at the time.
Upon his release from detention, the near-penniless Kenyatta becomes a close friend of the last British governor of Kenya, Malcolm MacDonald. In 1963, Kenyatta is elected as the first Prime Minister and later President of independent Kenya, while Malcolm MacDonald becomes the British High Commissioner. The government and civil service of the new country is comprised primarily of what the British called loyalists. Post-independence, Britain retains a number of military sites in Kenya. Today, Britain trains 6 infantry battalions in Kenya every year. 60 years after independence, the Kenyatta family is one of the wealthiest in Kenya.
The Kenyatta family have vast investments in land across the country, right down to the coast, all the way up to the what was called the White Highlands. They own the biggest milk company in Kenya. They own one of Kenya's biggest banks. They have a chain of hotels. They're building a sub-city right now, just right outside the bounds of Nairobi city. There's always been an open question about how Jomo Kenyatta was able to become such a rich person. Just 1 or 2 years after becoming president, his salary at the time doesn't match the kind of wealth that he has. There have been memoirs written by, people from his administration that say that he essentially would, engage in land grabs of very, very prime pieces of land owned by members of the settler community, etc.
A declassified CIA report noted that funds provided by foreign governments in order to pay for the redistribution of land from colonial settlers to landless Kenyans had allegedly been used by the Kenyattas and their associates to buy land for themselves. Today, the Kenyatta family are the biggest landowners in Kenya, holding over 500,000 acres of prime land across the country, while many former Kenyan freedom fighters and their families who fought specifically for the return of their land received nothing. Jomo Kenyatta passed away in 1978. His son, Uhuru Kenyatta, followed his father into politics.
The country's president, Uhuru Kenyatta, was among the world's rich who were named this week in the Pandora Papers.
According to the Pandora Papers, Kenya's president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and 6 members of his family have been linked to 13 offshore companies.
And what was revealed is that the family had invested in offshore structures. If you're including the extended family, as early as the mid-70s. Uhuru Kenyatta was listed as a beneficiary of a trust that, so to speak, belonged to his mother upon her death.
Uhuru Kenyatta claimed to be an advocate of transparency, and cracking down on corruption was a central theme of his term in office.
This dragon, this beast called corruption, is an animal that we intend to slay.
President Uhuru Kenyatta welcomed the leakage of the Pandora Papers, saying the publication of the papers will go a very long way in enhancing the financial transparency and openness required in the country and around the globe.
In Kenya, 2/3 of the population live in poverty on less than $3.20 per day. 70% of Kenyan families are chronically vulnerable due to poor nutrition, food insecurity, and preventable diseases. Kenyan law requires the President to provide a list of financial interests to the Ministry of Finance each year.
What we own, what we have, is open to the public, and we declare every year. And I've always said, if there is an instance where somebody can say that what we have done or obtained has not been legitimate, say so. We are ready to face any court.
He said that he's made his wealth declarations, but we've never seen them. Secondly, families of politically exposed persons don't have to declare their wealth. Between the year that he got in 2013 and today, those have been very good years for the Kenyatta's wealth. There is this feeling that the Kenyatas, as well as other political elite, they have become fabulously wealthy at a time when Kenya is suffering from the worst levels of corruption that it has seen in years. How it's been described is that there's been one rule for the elite, especially the elite that's connected to power, and another for everybody else. So that's what the perception is. I think I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
The Kenyatas are what are known as politically exposed persons, or PEPs. A politically exposed person is someone who holds a public function and as a result presents a higher risk of being involved in bribery or corruption.
Politically exposed persons, in theory, have access or potential access to public funds within particular countries, and our investigations have come up with lots of evidence that unfortunately there are PEPs who have been stealing public funds and moving it into places like the UK, either to hide it, to clean it, or to spend it. So PEPs are incredibly significant when it comes to the money laundering picture, and that's why professionals in the regulated sector, in the private sector, are supposed to do enhanced due diligence whenever they have a client who is a politically exposed person. Unfortunately, there are multiple cases that we have found where that clearly hasn't happened. I could think of one, former political official who was accused of embezzling a lot of money. This was splashed all over the internet. Within the 5 years following that, this person was able to open several UK bank accounts, took out a few mortgages on UK houses, opened a UK company.
Can you share who that person was?
Because of slap suits in the UK, which I'm sure you're really aware of, we're very aware of them, unfortunately. I have to literally libel check everything I say, learn it like a script, and then say it, so I can't.
Even if that is already in the public domain?
Yeah. It's a big issue. Journalists like yourselves, NGOs like us, are often targeted by very expensive lawyers in London, unfortunately, who take on dubious clients and basically pursue NGOs, pursue journalists for daring to mention the corrupt dealings of these people.
The Kenyatas are not the only developing world political dynasty who have amassed wealth and land beyond their known sources of income. Since coming to power after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the Aliyev family of Azerbaijan have accumulated a vast fortune and business empire. Azerbaijan is a major crude oil and natural gas producer. Fossil fuels are so abundant that surface oil deposits have burnt for centuries. The UK is the largest foreign investor in Azerbaijan, making up over half of all foreign investment.
The Aliyev family is the richest family in Azerbaijan. They came to power in 1993 when Heydar Aliyev, a former KGB general and Secretary General of Azerbaijan Soviet Republic, orchestrated a coup.
In 1993, Heydar Aliyev seized power in a coup. Shortly before Heydar Aliyev's death, his son, Ilham Aliyev, took over as president and has remained in power ever since. BP arrived in Azerbaijan in 1992, and after the coup, signed a secret deal with the new president. Today, BP is the largest foreign oil company in Azerbaijan.
The political opposition has always said that British Petroleum was responsible for the state coup. They brought Haidar Aliyev to power. I remember in 1993, during that difficult electoral and coup period, the British private security companies were doing something in Azerbaijan. Maybe they came to protect someone high-level officials of British Petroleum, or maybe they came to help protect members of the Aliyev family. We don't know. Nobody knows what is in this contract between British Petroleum and Aliyev. It's like biggest state secret in Azerbaijan.
On its website, BP calls this contract the contract for the new century. The Aliyev family have vast business interests in Azerbaijan.
Who is the owner of 5 biggest commercial banks in Azerbaijan? It's the Aliyev family. Who is the owner of the biggest private transportation company? It's the Aliyev family. Who is the owner of the biggest 5-star hotel networks in Azerbaijan? Again, it's the Aliyev family. They privatized the state's biggest banks, and after they made themselves owner of these banks, they start using these banks to launder money.
Heads of state and other major figures have deposited vast assets offshore.
It's according to a review of nearly 12 million files from around the world. It's the latest report by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists.
The Pandora Papers expose a London property empire worth nearly $700 million amassed by the ruling family of Azerbaijan.
So one of the properties that we looked at was on Conduit Street in central London. This property was bought in 2009 by a company owned by one of the associates of the presidency of Azerbaijan. And then this property was basically sold shortly after that to the daughter, who was 19 at the time, Arzu Aliyeva, and eventually it was sold to the Crown Estate, which is, owned by Queen Elizabeth II.
The Aliyevs made a profit of £31 million.
There was another property in Mayfair, Maddox Street, which was transferred to Haidar Aliyev. He was the 11-year-old son of the president of Azerbaijan. So, overnight, the tenants started paying their rent to an 11-year-old boy. In Kensington, there was a cluster of properties in one development called Thornwood Gardens. Over here in Holborn, there was a hotel.
When the Italian newspaper La Repubblica asked Ilham Aliyev about the Pandora Papers' revelations, he replied, "Some forces in the West try to use these kind of insinuations or half-truths in order to discredit the image of Azerbaijan and undermine Azerbaijan's position. They want to accuse us. They want to subordinate us. They want to impose their will on us. And I say, no. I will defend Azerbaijan, its sovereignty, its independence, its choice until the end of my life. And all these kind of dirty stories mean nothing to me and to the people of Azerbaijan."
In the Pandora Papers, we saw dozens of politicians and world leaders, current and former world leaders, with wealth offshore. Offshore service providers are supposed to conduct enhanced due diligence and really scrutinize the sources of wealth of the politically connected people that they provide services to.
The Pandora Papers revealed that offshore service providers did not conduct sufficient due diligence on their politically exposed clients.
There was some light Googling, running names through risk databases and things like that. The people conducting these checks are really doing checks to be seen to be doing checks.
At the moment, it's very hard to pursue large banks and big firms for money laundering offences because we do not have a failure to prevent money laundering offence within UK law, which Transparency International very much believes we should have. Our research identified 582 UK individuals and firms who were involved in major money laundering cases. We have people who will turn a blind eye to anything they may discover, proceed anyway, and those who maybe don't do enhanced due diligence when they should. You will find individuals and firms that will actually deliberately go out to try and get the services of those who are potentially involved in corruption and criminality, because it's big business, it's big money. There are 84,000 UK properties that are owned anonymously. Now, of course, some of those will be owned with the legitimate money, but it's quite possible that a lot will be owned with suspicious funds.
Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan, is an unusual place. It is not just the prevalence of stray cats that make it unusual, because even more prevalent than cats are police and security officials. There is a security official on every street, on every corner, even underneath bridges. Ornate parks of marble and sandstone are scattered throughout the city. Only in the suburbs and on the edges of Baku is the fairy tale confronted by reality.
In 2005, Azerbaijan signed the UN Convention Against Corruption. One of the requirements of that treaty was to implement financial declaration for all state officials. Parliament ratified that treaty. Yet, until today, 17 years later, nobody is declaring their wealth. The first journalist who exposed the huge corruption in the government was killed at the front door of his house. After that, we saw that all journalists who spoke about stolen assets, they have a problem. They are put in jail. Their lives become extremely difficult. They are prosecuted, they are blackmailed with private family issues.
The National Crime Agency, or NCA, is tasked with investigating money laundering in the UK.
I think there are reasonable grounds for the NCA to investigate assets owned by or linked to the Aliyev family in the UK. It's not always entirely clear how the presidential family has made their wealth. Some of that money, at least, came through money laundering systems, laundromats, which are known to have funneled illicit money out of Azerbaijan.
We wanted to ask the NCA why they had not opened an investigation on the Aliyev family's assets in the UK. The NCA did not agree to speak to us.
When I was in Azerbaijan, the British embassy occasionally invited us for breakfast with ambassador and other British officials. They would tell us that they were afraid that if we did a strong investigation, we would put ourselves in trouble. They never give us any support to investigate corruption. British politicians, including British politicians in the Council of Europe Parliamentary Assembly, tried to wash the negative image of Aliyev. You know who is the biggest lobbyist in Azerbaijan from the UK? He's the son of the Queen, Prince Andrew, Epstein's friend. He is also a friend of Aliyev, a very good friend.
Every 5 years, the people of Azerbaijan elect a president. And every 5 years since 1993, that president's name has been Mr. Aliyev. In the 2008 election, Mr. Aliyev received 89% of the vote. In 2013, he received 84.5%, and in 2018, he received 86% of the vote. During the 2018 election, Emin Huseynov worked for an NGO investigating electoral violations.
We observed the elections and discovered irregularities. After that, the government closed down our NGO. They confiscated all our equipment. They put most of us in jail. I decided to escape. The police in Azerbaijan were looking for me, as if I was the #1 terrorist in the country. They put my photo at the entrance of all metro stations. The taxi drivers and the bus drivers had my photo. I changed my appearance. I grew a beard and dyed my hair blonde. Secret agents were waiting in front of the Swiss embassy. They asked the guard, "Have you checked him?" And the guard replied, "This is not the guy you are looking for. The guy is a foreigner." Switzerland protected me. And after 10 months, the head of the Swiss Ministry of Foreign Affairs came to Azerbaijan, and he was able to take me with him to Switzerland. After that, President Aliyev illegally cancelled my passport and he stripped me of my citizenship.
The Aliyev family's love of London property and use of offshore financial secrecy to hide their wealth is mirrored by another political dynasty of the developing world, the Sharifs of Pakistan.
The Prime Minister of Pakistan has been disqualified from office. The court also disqualified the country's finance minister, Ishaq Dar.
This verdict was unanimous. All the 5 judges declared that Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is not an honest and sagacious person, and hence he should be disqualified.
Nawaz Sharif is the 3 times elected Prime Minister of Pakistan. During his premiership in the 90s, Nawaz Sharif privatized many state-owned industries.
The privatization policies which were initiated by Mr. Nawaz Sharif during his stints as Prime Minister during the 90s, that is the start of corruption, where a lot of state holdings, they were portrayed as if they are making losses, and then they were handed out to different political backers of Nawaz Sharif, his friends and his business associates.
The government of Nawaz Sharif then passed a law that the tax authorities in Pakistan could not question the origin of money that entered Pakistan from abroad.
One thing which we need to remember, and this is very, very important. When you're in the power, you can make laws according to your will. You can actually manipulate the system. You can bribe the people. You can get cuts from wherever you want. And this is what the Sharifs has been doing, and this is what they've been accused over the years.
It's a close-knit family affair. In the case of Hudaybiyah paper mill, once you look at the directors and shareholders, it's only the entire Sharif family, the immediate blood relations, and a few cousins who are also mentioned as directors. To look at the shareholding of Ramzan sugar mill, that gives you an idea that it is run by Chief Executive Officer Mr. Hamza Shehbaz Sharif.
Shehbaz Sharif is a younger brother of Nawaz Sharif. He was the leader of the Punjab Assembly while his brother was Prime Minister. He is accused of laundering tens of millions of dollars through the Ramzan sugar mill, a company owned by the Sharif family.
Accounts were opened in the name of these low-level, low-wage employees who do not come into the tax net. Money used to be deposited in those accounts, and finally they used to land in the accounts of either Mr. Hamza Shehbaz Sharif, Mr. Sulaiman Shehbaz Sharif, or Mr. Shehbaz Sharif himself. In fact, these files which you see here, it gives the names, it gives the banking documents, the challans, everything which is mentioned in these, all the banking record, the names of the low-wage employees. Here is one example. Look at it. Mr. Masroor Anwar, he is depositing this in the name of Mr. Shehbaz Sharif. This is 1.6 million rupees. This was deposited in Habib Bank of Pakistan on 27th April 2017 when Shehbaz Sharif was the Chief Minister. This is another deposit, 13th May 2016, in the name of Mia Muhammad Shehbaz Sharif, an amount of 6,52,451 rupees deposited in an account by Mr. Masroor Anwar. 1 crore and 90 lakh rupees being deposited in the account of Mr. Shehbaz Sharif by Masroor Anwar. Now, you might ask, who is Masroor Anwar? Masroor Anwar, according to this investigation by the Federal Investigation Agency, was a low-level employee of Sharif family. Your own family member is the finance minister, and your other brother is the prime minister. So then entire banking chain was there to facilitate them. And I was talking to one of the sources in the investigation because once they investigated the bankers as to how it was happening under their nose and why they didn't stop all these activities, they said that people used to come with gunmen into the banks. And one of the female investigators said she was crying a banking official that what we could have done. The bank managers, they used to get a call from top executives in the bank. The banks themselves were part of this nexus of covering up the corruption of the Sharif family.
The so-called Panama Papers contain allegations of money laundering and tax evasion,
involving world leaders, and where some of them are accused of hiding their money in many cases in an effort to avoid taxes.
It was a surprise for the people in Pakistan because it came out internationally. It had much more credibility because previously over the years the Sharif family had been using the views that all these allegations against them are politically motivated.
Sharif's 3 children are named in the Panama Papers. His family owns properties in London through offshore accounts. Sharif's daughter denies owning the London properties. Documents from her allegedly date back to 2006 and show she is a trustee of the properties, not an owner. But those documents are written in a font called Calibri, which was not commercially available until 2007.
If you look at 1992 and 93, this is a very important time. Mariam assets grew 21 times. And there's no justification for that. In a single year, you are not a business owner. There's no business under your name. But 21 times, your assets are going up.
In 1992, Mariam Nawaz turned 19 years old. After the Panama Papers revelations, Pakistan's investigative agencies probed the financial affairs of the Sharif family.
The joint investigation team basically found out that Mr. Nawaz Sharif could not justify the assets he had made from known sources of income. That was one of the main charges.
The matter was sent for criminal prosecution. In criminal prosecution, there was a trial which went on for almost a year. And in that trial, not even a single answer came from Mr. Sharif about the origin of his wealth or the explanation of those 4 Avonfield flats in London.
Where is the money trail? That they have never been able to prove.
The Sharif family is believed to be one of the wealthiest in Pakistan, but the origin of their wealth remains a mystery.
The flat that you're living in at the moment in Mayfair was actually named in the Pakistani paper, The News, last year as one of 4 which was illegally bought by your father through various Swiss and offshore companies.
Why don't people who are actually blaming us for that go to the courts and prove it?
But do you know who owns the flat that you're living in?
Well, that is not the question right now.
Why not? But it's the question I'm asking you. Do you know who owns the flat?
Well, it's on a rent. I'm living on a rent basis which comes from every quarter from Pakistan.
You're renting it personally, or the money comes from Pakistan?
The money comes from Pakistan. I'm just like any other student living with his parents. I doesn't necessarily have to know about what the facts and who owns the flat and who pays for the rents and who pays for my living. The family deserves all this. It is not my fault that I was born in a rich family, in a wealthy family. My grandfather earned that with a hard work, sheer hard work.
When you ask them that where you got this money from, they will start telling you the story of their late grandfather. At the time of independence, we came from India, we have businesses. Seriously speaking, there's no business in the world which has no money trail.
If you look at their tax filings, it doesn't come out as a big industrial family. The Sharifs never featured in that rich families of Pakistan. But now if you make a list of the richest families in Pakistan, then definitely Sharifs would feature in the top 10, maybe in the top 5, because exact amount of their holdings as to how much is hidden in Luxembourg, in UK, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, what is in different bank accounts in the United States, that is not known. Whether it is $4 billion or $5 billion, that is not known.
In December 2018, as a result of the Panama Papers revelations, Nawaz Sharif and his daughter are sentenced to 7 years on corruption charges. Nawaz Sharif is granted bail for medical treatment and